Well, everything in America must be about racial politics now, so it's no surprise that CNN's Brian Stelter and Jim Acosta were both wildly speculating that Donald Trump doesn't really care about the flag and the national anthem and our civic symbols. Instead, he's just a racist. Watch.
There is an unmistakable racial element to this story, and that's why I come down on the side of covering this and covering it big. The awkward subtext is a question we asked a few weeks ago on this program. Is President Trump a racist?
Why is it that the president was seeming to go after African-American athletes over the weekend? He went after Colin Kaepernick at that rally in Alabama Friday night. Tom Brady did not make it here to the White House when the New England Patriots made it. There were no angry tweets from the president directed at Tom Brady or other athletes. I don't think it's a stretch to say that is a bit of a dog whistle that is being played out there.
The larger question, of course, is how did Jim Acosta wind up on television? But for the meantime, we're going to content ourselves with some of the smaller questions with Joe Concha, who writes about the media for The Hill and joins us tonight. Look, if you're a reporter, you probably ought not to be speculating about people's motives because aren't they fundamentally unknowable? Like, how could Jim Acosta know what the president means?
Can I answer osmosis on that? Because you could look at all of President Trump's tweets on this topic, and it's all out there. Race is not broached once. He's also verbally talked about this as well, and you don't see race broached anywhere. But since we have, again, reporters and pundits that last month were playing mental health officials when it comes to analyzing the president's sanity, now apparently we're reading minds as well as far as that goes. But just to answer Mr. Acosta when he said, why weren't there any angry tweets at Tom Brady when he didn't show up at the White House for that celebration? Brady's mother has cancer, and Tom wanted to spend time with her at that time. That's why he couldn't go, and that's why the president didn't respond, but Jim Acosta doesn't report that.
Yeah, and by the way, I was at the Redskins game last night and watched the Raiders kneel for the national anthem, and a bunch of them were white. You know what I mean? And by the way, I think the league is overwhelmingly like 70% African-American players. So is any attack on the NFL a racial attack? Is that what they're saying?
Well, there appears to be this tick with our political media that all the time we insert a racial component to stories that don't warrant them whatsoever. And let me give you another example with another story. Brian Fallon is a former press secretary or a spokesperson for Hillary Clinton. He's now a political analyst for CNN. And he tweeted, and I asked your producers to put this up because I want to make this an educational experience. This is what Brian Fallon tweeted out today. Trump's racist neglect of Puerto Rico is threatening lives. It's time to start caring about the crisis there. So that's what we're dealing with now, that when a hurricane hits a U.S. territory, and we've responded, I think, pretty well, like we did with Harvey and Irma, it's racism that's working its way into this. But you were at that Redskins game last night. Good thing you watched, because not a lot of people did, Tucker. That was the lowest rated Week 3 NBC Sunday night telecast since 2006. So that's when you know that this isn't just, well, you know, some people are boycotting, they really don't care. No, this is a real problem for the NFL right now if those are the numbers that we're seeing. And
I think this is correct, and it may be wrong, but I think it's right, that the teams with the most players protesting the national anthem and the flag were more likely to lose last night than to win.
Oh, that's an interesting, I can't comment on that. I didn't research that. But I do know that the NFL, Tucker, is awfully hypocritical here when it comes to free speech. Now, you may remember last year that horrible situation in Dallas where a sniper took out 5 Dallas police officers and wounded several, right? The Dallas Cowboys wanted to wear a decal, a little one, on their helmets to honor the Dallas Police Department with the Dallas Police Department logo. And the NFL said, no, you can't do that. And when D'Angelo Williams, a running back, wanted to wear pink cleats for the entire season because he wanted to honor his mother because she died of breast cancer, the NFL said, no, you can only do that when we're running our campaign in October. And when Avery Williamson wanted to wear 9/11 cleats that he made himself, red, white, and blue stars, very fashionable, the NFL said, no, you can't honor 9/11 victims. So the NFL seems to be picking and choosing its spots here in terms of what kind of free speech you could have and when. But overall, Tucker, I talked to a lot of people yesterday. I was out and about. I didn't put a microphone in their face, just conversations. The sentiment on the ground is that people agree with the president on this one. They don't necessarily agree with the way he presented himself, because, you know, saying sons of bitches and so on, but it completely contrasts what we saw in the media bubble, and not just cable news, but on ESPN, sports media as well, which was universal condemnation of Trump. This is like the 2016 election. The conditions on the ground and what people feel is completely different than what people are thinking in New York and Washington.
Well, that's always the case, and they don't actually care what people outside New York and D.C. think.
No,
Joe,
they only care what each other think within their
bubble.
bubble.
Right. Trust me, I live here. 2017's intense hurricane season has emboldened some climate activists. In a recent piece for The Outline, a writer called Bryant Merchant asserted that, quote, climate change denial should be a crime, meaning people who disagree with me should be punished. Meanwhile, in The Nation, a writer called Mark Hertzgaard said that what he calls climate denial should be punished as, quote, premeditated murder. Whoa. What does an actual scientist think about this notion? A death penalty offense disagreeing with climate advocates. Judith Curry is a climatologist. She's the former chair of the School of Earth and Atmospheric Sciences at Georgia Tech. She's an actual authority on this subject, and she joins us tonight. Judith Curry, thanks a lot for coming on tonight. Do you think that people who raise questions about climate change should be prosecuted for premeditated murder?
Well, of course not. I think it's a rather ludicrous proposal. I hope that nobody's taking it seriously. Climate change is a very complex issue, and I'm concerned that we've oversimplified both the problem and its solution. And we need to have a wide-ranging debate about all this, and people trying to stifle it are shortchanging science, the policy process, and our democracy.
But why would we have a debate on something that's absolutely settled, about which we know everything? Isn't a debate just allowing industry to destroy the earth for profit?
We understand some basic things, like we know that the climate has been warming. We know that humans have been emitting carbon dioxide. We know that carbon dioxide warms the planet. However, there's widespread disagreement on how much of the recent warming is caused by humans, how much climate will change in the 21st century. Is warming bad or not? And what, if anything, can we do about it? All of those issues are topics of intense debate, very complex topics.
What do you mean, is warming bad? We know that it's, and I think I'm quoting Al Gore and Leonardo DiCaprio here when I say, it's an existential threat to the planet, Judith Curry. How could you even raise the question, is it bad? What do you mean by that?
Well, I don't think anybody thinks it's an existential threat to the planet who is seriously looking at this problem from an academic perspective. Climate has always changed. Whether warming is intrinsically good or bad, I mean, that's a value judgment. So there's a lot of uncertainty about what might happen, what are the impacts, and whether they're bad or good. Whether they're bad or good is fundamentally a value judgment, and some regions might benefit and some might be harmed. I mean, that's just part of the way weather and climate works.
Are you surprised to learn that Al Gore studied theology and not climatology in college?
No.
And with that, Dr. Judith Curry, it is always great to see you. I hope you'll come back anytime. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Well, good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson tonight. Football isn't just the most popular sport in this country, though it is. It's also one of the only institutions we have left that unites everybody here across race and income and geography. There are not many of those, no matter who they voted for last fall. Americans who love the same team can bond over football. No longer possible, sadly. Now even the country's final nonpartisan refuge has been invaded by politics. On Saturday, the president tweeted that NFL players who protest the national anthem ought to be fired. And as if on cue, the protests intensified. In London, players for the Baltimore Ravens and the Jacksonville Jaguars kneeled in contempt of the Star-Spangled Banner while standing respectfully for God Save the Queen. In Chicago, the entire Pittsburgh Steelers team stayed off the field for the anthem, save for a single player, an Army veteran who defied his own coach by walking out. His jersey, by the way, is the single most popular football-related piece of paraphernalia on the internet right now. In Washington, D.C. last night, virtually every player on the Raiders sat in protest as a military honor guard carried an American flag onto the field. Now, the sight of pampered millionaires giving the rhetorical finger to the country that made them rich is obviously disgusting, so it's no surprise that in stadiums across America, fans booed when they saw this. The left responded today pretty lamely, saying players have a First Amendment right to criticize their country. Of course, nobody really contests that, though free speech lectures are a little hard to take from the very people who routinely shut down the political speech of their opponents. In any case, it's not the point. Just because something is legal doesn't mean you ought to do it. The Constitution also protects your right to, I don't know, scream obscenities at nuns, but it doesn't prevent the rest of us from judging you for doing it. So what are these protests really about? Well, some players claim their core complaint is police brutality, in which case, fine, protest that. Learn the facts, make your case, propose solutions, run for office, try to make the country better. But no, that's too hard. It's easier to follow the demagogues and attack America itself. You'll win plaudits for bravery on Instagram. So why is this a big deal? Why is it, in the end, dangerous for this country? Well, for the same reason we sing the national anthem in the first place so often and stand for the flag, used to say the Pledge of Allegiance, all those other slightly silly civic rituals that liberals have long despised and sneered at. Why are they important? Because in the end, love of country is all we have. We aren't like other nations with a homogenous population and a shared history and religion. Increasingly, we don't even have a common language. So shared belief in America, the country, is the only glue that binds us together. Why are Vermont and Mississippi in the same country? Because people in both places love America. What happens when they no longer do? Many have accused the president of using the flag controversy as a diversion for more pressing topics like the threat of North Korea or the failure of his health care initiative. And as a political matter, that may be true. But it does not change the inherent significance of what you just watched last night at the game. Because when our elites attack our national symbols as if they're worthless and loathsome, something important, something monumental has changed here. If the people who've benefited most from America despise it, and increasingly they do, where does that leave the rest of us?